What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be talking mostly just balance changes. I know we have a patch coming up, so I just want to talk about some cards that I think need to be nerfed, some cards that I think should be buffed. I just honestly don't feel like playing a ton until these balance changes comes through. I feel like I've been playing the same exact meta for quite a while now. You can only play against Shuri and Thanos so many times before you just kind of get sick of it. The games are still fun, just I need some variety in my life. So let's talk about some cards I think need to get nerfed first, then we'll go talk about some buffs, and we'll just, talk in general. So the first card, I already mentioned the two decks, but first we have our bad girl Shuri right here. On reveal, double the power of the next card you play, and this card, this keyword right here, double, is always dangerous in every card game. There's a few things in all card games that are always dangerous. The word double, any sort of mana reduction, and mana cheating. Those three things are like, I don't want to call them the cardinal sins because they're also fun effects, but those are the three most dangerous things you can do when designing cards, and we've been bitten by the double bug here. There's quite a few things they can do to Shuri. I've seen some people mention making it so this says double the power of the next card you play at this location. So you have to play the card on top of Shuri. Honestly, that doesn't do a ton to the deck besides make you maybe be able to predict with a Shang-Chi, or occasionally be able to do something like, I don't even know, like arrow something out of there. It doesn't do a ton besides really limit the Arnim Zola plays. It makes you know where they're going to play, so you could maybe lock down a different lane with a Professor X or something while they're playing onto their Shuri lane. But like I said, it honestly just does not do a ton. I can see them making this be kind of like a rescue type effect, where instead of, how rescue gets +5, you play a card here next turn. They could change the double to a flat increase, +5, +6, plus whatever. It'll still be pretty powerful. Even if Shuri did +6, that would still make her on average a 4/8, which is the top end of a 4-drop on the curve. So even +6 would make Shuri on par with the highest power 4-drops. The other avenue is that things like Red Skull get touched instead, but Red Skull isn't a particularly good card in general. It's really just Shuri, and then the kind of niche applications of like Sauron decks, but I don't think Red Skull deserves to die for Shuri's sins, so I'd rather see Shuri as a whole get changed. Next up, we've got, well, I don't actually have him in my collection, but Thanos. Now, there's two things to look at here. One of them is Thanos himself, and the other one is a card that never was too strong, that has probably become too strong with the introduction of Thanos. And that card is, unfortunately, my boy Lockjaw. Where's Lockjaw? Here he is. Lockjaw, after you play a card here, swap with a card in your deck. Historically, Lockjaw decks have been inconsistent, high roll, fun, but not too good because of the amount of times that you would low roll. You would, pull a Wasp from your deck just as often as you would pull an Infinite. So Lockjaw was never too good. Now the problem being, with Thanos being introduced, you get a whole bunch of one-cost cards with powerful effects that you can play onto your Lockjaw. So that alone, you can pack your deck with 6-cost cards without being, way too heavy and ultra inconsistent. But also, the Thanos stones have, Space Stone, the one where you can move cards out after you play the card. So not only are you getting extra energy with the Time Stone, Space Stone lets you move any whiffs off of Lockjaw or just lets you play more cards onto it. I'd like for them to find a way to not nerf Lockjaw, because I really do like this card quite a bit, but also at the same time, I could see a world where it becomes necessary at some point just because, like I mentioned previously with Shuri, this Lockjaw is a form of mana cheating, and even if they find a way to dodge nerfing Lockjaw for now, I think they're going to have to find something to do at some point, because as you print more cards, it's going to become more and more of a problem. I would like to see him built in sort of like a combo-y fashion. I think I've seen somebody suggest this before, but I don't recall the name, so my apologies if it was you. I don't mean to be stealing your thunder. But I saw somebody mention having Lockjaw be, after you play a card here, swap it with a card in your deck that costs 1 energy more. So if I play a Wasp, it'll pull a 1-drop. If I play a 1-drop, it'll pull a 2-drop, so on and so forth. That does hurt Lockjaw quite a bit, and maybe he needs to become a 2-drop in that scenario. But I think that would make for kind of an interesting combo-y type deck, and even that might wind up too good over time. But I think Lockjaw at some point is going to catch the heat for Thanos right now. And on the subject of Thanos, since I don't have him in my collection, I don't want to buy him. We'll talk about him for a moment. I think Thanos might need to get soft redesigned, so to speak. The reason being, Thanos is the weakest card in the Thanos deck. And that sounds ridiculous to say, but he is the weakest card. He probably gets played the least. There's almost no reason for him to exist in the deck if not for the stones. They even gave him a buff recently to the card himself, trying to make the card better, but the card still doesn't matter because that's not why you're playing Thanos. You're playing Thanos because you get 6 Infinity Stones that are cheap, that draw, and that are, frankly, probably stronger than similarly costed cards of in the game. So like you have Time Stone, which is a 1/1 that draws 1 that gives you +1 energy next turn. Psylocke is a 2/1 that gives you +1 energy next turn. Advantage Time Stone, majorly. You've got Reality Stone, 1/1, change this location to a random location. Compared to Scarlet Witch, 2/3, change this location to a random location. You know, that could be a bit of a wash because Scarlet Witch has +2 power, but Reality Stone draws a card. That's, you know, pretty close, if not advantage to Reality Stone. You've got, what is it, Mind Stone, the orange one, -1 to all enemy cards at this location, ongoing. Spider-Woman's a 5/8 that does that for an ability, and Mind Stone's a 1/1. It's, the stone's value winds up being like between 3 and 5 power worth of value per card. The Space Stone being able to move cards out, like we mentioned with Lockjaw, that's just ridiculous. I think you're probably going to need to redesign a lot of the stones, and it's tough because if the stones don't draw cards, Thanos is a horrible deck, just awful. But the fact that they do draw cards means the stones probably need to be weaker, and I don't know how much you make them weaker. And I know I've seen people talk about the Quinjet application, where just make it so the stones count as starting in your deck, and that will make it so you can't play the stones for 0. But honestly, even if they make that change, the stones are so strong. I think you're going to have to make tweaks to quite a few of the stones and kind of push Thanos in the direction of you want to build towards playing Thanos instead of ignoring Thanos and just playing the stones. The other thing that's worth talking about now is because of the way the stones works, you are guaranteed 6 1-cost cards being shuffled into your deck that let you cycle, that let you do a whole bunch of cool things. You know you have 6 1-cost cards to play that will draw you deeper into your deck. So the way these Thanos decks get constructed is it's Lockjaw, it's a handful of really big cards, you know, your Magnetos, maybe some of them play Chavez. They're just playing big cards, and then they're playing all of the tech cards in the game. So this Thanos deck really does it all. It's got cheap cards that cycle, it's got big heavy Magnetos and things like that to cheat out with Lockjaw, it's got Shang-Chi, it's got Arrow, it has every single, like, I'm going to call them cheat tactics, but I'm not saying the deck is cheating. It's things that steal wins, and all the kind of card design sins are all in one deck, and it does it all. The only thing that really stops Thanos is if you get a incredibly unlucky starting draw, and you draw like your Magneto and all that heavy stuff, and you don't draw any of your stones, that's really the only thing holding you back. And even if you do start slow, all you need is your Lockjaw and maybe a stone, and you start popping off. Because then you shuffle your stone back into your deck, you get a big card out, then you get your stone back. You play your stone again, it's 1 energy, you draw another card. I know I went on for a long time about Thanos, but I think Thanos needs to be almost redesigned. And they've kind of walked themselves into an awkward corner here because they kept all the Series 5 big bads permanently in Series 5, your Galactus, your Kang, your Thanos, so they want them to be powerful, but just because they're big bads doesn't mean they deserve to be more powerful than all the rest of the cards in the game forever, so it's an awkward scenario. Enough about Thanos, though. The final card that I think needs to get looked at, I really don't want them to nerf too many cards. Those two decks, the Shuri and Thanos deck, obviously need to be changed. And finally, I think Arrow's time has come. I think Arrow's time is overdue, actually. I think Arrow has been the strongest card in the game, arguably since the game released. It was not a problem early on because I don't think players realized the power of Arrow yet or how to properly play her. So people were not winning 2 lanes, playing Arrow in the 3rd lane they were losing to guaranteed victory. That took a little bit of time for the player base to really understand and discover the best way to use Arrow. And since then, she's kind of just been a win thief forever. Like, Leader got nerfed because A, incredibly unfun to lose to, and B, if you were losing 2 locations on turn 6, you lost the game. Arrow kind of fits both of those criteria, and she's potentially even better than Leader was. The only real counters to Arrow are A, filling up your lanes, which if you want to fill up your lanes, you need cheap cards. Killmonger kills that. Goes back to our tech card discussion we had previously. Or B, play things like Doctor Doom that, summon multiple cards so that even if Arrow moves Doom, you're still playing cards everywhere. But that doesn't fit into every single type of deck. How to change Arrow, I have no clue. I've seen people talk about the must be played on turn 5 stipulation. You guys have heard me say before, I don't want to use that as a balancing mechanism. The fact that we had to use it for Magic was kind of like a break glass emergency type thing. I don't want to just whip that out every time there's a card that's strong when played on turn 6. You can potentially have Arrow pull just the first card your opponent played this turn to this location, so that if you're the type of card that, if you're like a Sarah Miracle type deck, you just know, play my first card, that might get moved, but cards 2, 3, and 4 are guaranteed to be where they are. That gives you some counterplay, and that's probably one of the better feeling ways to change Arrow. You could maybe even buff her slightly power-wise, but I don't even think you need to. I think I would probably go the route of move the first card your opponent played this turn. Other than that, I'm sure there's other avenues to look at, but I think Arrow's time has just come. It's been just a bit too much for her. Cards that I'd like to see buffed. We're going to go through the whole collection, and I'm just going to point out cards that I think are particularly weak or don't even have niche applications, and what could potentially be done to change some of these. So the first really weak card I see here is Elektra. And I want to put a star next to that because Elektra in a vacuum is not weak. Elektra is actually quite powerful. The problem being, why would you ever run Elektra when Killmonger exists? So I don't think Elektra needs to be buffed as much as I think Killmonger, and I've already talked about all the tech cards. I think all the tech cards need to be shifted slightly, and then Elektra would actually have a role in the game. Hawkeye, niche, but fine. Nova's still pretty good. Angel, I've seen people talk about, and I kind of agree. I think Angel should probably summon from your hand as well. It's only 2 power. He's not that strong. I would change him to be able to come from your deck or your hand. And similarly, I've seen people say that about M'Baku as well. I agree. Especially because it's a random location. Angel is, you can't steal wins with Angel as much as you can steal wins with M'Baku occasionally, but M'Baku's random, so I think they kind of balance each other out there. I think that's mostly fine. I think most of these cards are fine. One change I have seen mentioned for Uatu, I think if you run him in your deck, you should be able to see all 3 locations. Having to draw this in the first turn or 2 to really get value out of it makes it feel horrible. And otherwise, it's a pretty weak 1-drop. A 1-2 that does nothing if you draw it after turn 3 is really bad. So I would probably make him active as long as he's in your starting deck. We are borderline, I've said it before, we're borderline collector getting buffed soon. That's how strong the rest of the game has gotten. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I do think we are getting quite close. I don't want Dagger directly buffed. I just want more move cards introduced where Dagger can be used, if that makes sense. I don't think she needs a buff. I think move as a whole just needs more cards and more interesting cards to be able to trigger their effects. And then I guess Dagger would get indirectly buffed as a result of that. I don't want to take too much time here. Morph deserves to stay meh forever. You know, Punisher is a starter card. Things like Punisher that you get early on in the game, they're designed to be slightly weaker, but easier to use so you can learn how to play the game. Although it does stink that cards like the Punisher and Captain America are slightly weaker because they're kind of iconic. But you know, that is what it is. You gotta learn how to play the game with some sort of cards, and why not, you know, cool cards that you're familiar with. What else do we like here? Honestly, I feel pretty good about most of the game. Just need a couple changes. Crystal, I think. Crystal actually and Quake. I think Crystal and Quake should get the if this is at the middle location removed. They're both pretty cards, and having to play them in the middle location to get their ability. I know they were changed, and it was supposed to be a buff, but I think it was a nerf. Change them both to be on reveal, shuffle your hand, and on reveal, shuffle locations. And I think they both get slightly better. I still think they're both kind of still but I think they'll both get better. And I think Crystal badly needs a buff. Can't make her too good because I know they don't want Draw to be too good in this game, but also Thanos exists, so... You know, do they really not want Draw to be too good in this game? Who really knows? I think... I feel pretty good about most cards otherwise. Nick Fury, I know I've already said, could probably use a 1 power buff. Stature, still kind of I think Black Bolt should be redesigned to some sort of 4-cost card. Maybe like a 4/6 White Queen stat line. I think he gets a lot more playable at that point. Other than that, maybe hitting more than 1 card. Discarding 1 card on turn 5, especially the lowest cost card, is almost pointless besides in combo scenarios. I still love Black Bolt. I think make him a 4-cost, make him be able to play it earlier, and he gets a little bit better. Spider-Woman buff was actually awesome. I'm glad that they did that. And then out of the 6-cost cards, I think the 6-cost cards are in decent shape, besides this guy right here. Orca needs a change badly. You could potentially make him a 5-cost, and he still would be, like, not great. Even if you made him, like, a... Like, what is Namor? 4/6? You could make Orca, like, a 5/8. And I still don't think he's, like, that great. He's still okay in that scenario. I'm not saying that's how I would change him, but Orca needs a little bit of love. He's pretty weak otherwise. So, yeah, I think, you know, Orca... Maybe Fury, maybe Black Bolt. I still would like to see Kingpin redesigned. Maybe he costs, you know, 4. Maybe he costs 5 in terms of location. Fisk Tower. I think a 4, you know, like a 4/2 that does that would be solid. I don't know the stat lines off the top of my head, but I think Kingpin needs a redesign. He's just really weak right now. And you don't want him to be too good because, you know, destroying cards is rough. I also think Moon Knight needs some sort of targeting. You can't have it be too good because you're going to lose a card as well. But Moon Knight backfires way too much. Just way too much. Or we need some other form of cheap discard type thing. You know, a cheaper stature enabler. Or a cheaper, you know, hand disruption type card. Just something, because Moon Knight hurts a lot. I'd almost rather play Moon Knight as like a 3/0 that just discards a card from the enemy hand and not mine. I don't know. Moon Knight is just too awkward. He doesn't even fit into discard decks most of the time. So some tweaks there. But honestly, I think the balance of the game as a whole is in a really good state. Just, you know, a couple love buffs, a couple of redesigns, kind of like Wolverine got, and really just nerf those 2 main decks, maybe look at Arrow, and I think we're in an incredible state. Besides, you know, the tech card situation, but I don't think the tech card situation is ever going away. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. I'm sorry I rambled on a little bit long, but I could talk about balance forever. Let me know what changes you would make, if there's any cards that I missed on the nerf or buff list, and we'll see what happens, and we'll have a reaction when the patch notes finally drop. Thank you all so much for watching. Please consider subscribing if you're new to the channel. See you guys next time. Peace.